enjoying the sunshine today, very much so. And that's my beautiful wife, Heather. And we were up in about an hour, I think, from here, looking at a waterfall. And it was a nice little spot. We've got a picture. So I had the blessing of working with Dr. David DeRose. Some of you may know him. And he invited me to join him on a project to write a book on blood pressure in finding natural ways to improve blood pressure. And so we spent 2 years researching this project, looking through the medical literature, writing based on our own experiences and also on what we were finding in the research. And it was a labor of love. It was a lot of work, but learned a lot. And hopefully we can share with you some of those principles today. We certainly will not be able to get through even a tenth of the material really today. But hopefully you can start to get a little bit of a taste. And if you'd like to join me this Thursday for our initial program, we'd love to have you. And it's a 4-week program once a week. So as you may know, blood pressure elevation is a worldwide problem. Everywhere that you see a red, on average, the blood pressure is above 130 systolic, and it's certainly quite common, and maybe even less of a problem here in America than some places, even though here it's a significant issue. So let's look at high blood pressure in the United States. We have some places that are doing a little better and then other places that are doing worse. And guess what? Tennessee is right in the thick of it. If you look at where the red is there, you can see that some 35% of people in Tennessee have high blood pressure. This is from 2017. You can see the South is just severely affected with high blood pressure. Some 1/3 or more people have it in our area. So why is it dangerous? Many of you may know these things, but when your blood pressure raises, it's hard on the arteries. And once years and years of that goes by, things begin to break down. Obviously, the most devastating issue is a stroke. That is absolutely life-changing. You can have issues with what we call hypertensive encephalopathy, and that's where your blood pressure is very high and you are confused. You have headaches. You can even go on to have seizures, and it's a big problem. You can get aneurysms. You can get aneurysms all over the place, but one very common place is your aorta. And that's certainly potentially life-threatening if it gets too large. Your eyes, you can have blindness from high blood pressure called hypertensive retinopathy. You can have heart attacks, obviously. High blood pressure is one of the major issues that lead to a heart attack. And heart failure. And then finally, your kidneys can fail. So a lifetime of high blood pressure, or even just several years of significant high blood pressure, can lead to a situation where your kidneys just don't work, and it leads to a buildup of toxins in your body. You don't feel good, and can eventually lead to dialysis, in a worst case scenario. All right, so not only is high blood pressure bad, but treating it, getting your numbers down to normal levels, is good. And so here's one example. We could give many, but here's one example that we care about very significantly. If you take a person, for example, under 60 years of age, and you treat their blood pressure, you get their blood pressure down, you lower their risk of a stroke by 50%. So that's a massive improvement. And if you have a person greater than 60 years of age and you improve their blood pressure, you lower it by about 40%. And so those are substantive, notable improvements in your risk of a stroke. So if you want to improve your risk of a stroke, get your blood pressure down. So just what is blood pressure? It seems intuitive at this point, but just to give you a definition. It's the force transmitted throughout your arteries after blood leaves your heart. And so it's the amount of pressure that's pushing against the arteries while the blood's flowing down every artery in your body. So the top number is when the heart squeezes the blood and creates that the initial bolus of pressure that goes into the arteries. It reaches a peak pressure, and that peak pressure is the top number, called systolic. And the bottom pressure is when the heart is relaxing and filling with blood, and the pressure comes down to a low level, and that is called diastolic. So how high is too high? This has been a very long standing debate as to what exactly is the definition of too high. Obviously, we're trying to find this definition. We're trying to find elevated pressures representing forces high enough to cause problems for organs and tissues at the end of your pipe, so to speak. And so what is that pressure? And so there's a committee that met looking at this question. This is some years ago now, and they came to what you see on the screen in terms of normal and pre-hypertension, stage 1, stage 2. And they came to the numbers as you see there. And then they went on to talk about whether or not you had diabetes or you had kidney problems, and those patients have to keep their pressures a little bit lower. And if you're above 60 years of age, they in the next rendition of the committee's meeting, they decided that you could allow the blood pressure to be a little bit higher because of the related side effects that people have on medications, for example, and so on. And then recently in 2017, then this is still a debated topic. I know my own professional organization, American Academy of Family Physicians, rejected these numbers and didn't feel that they were a good idea. But a number of organizations have accepted them to now have stage 1 hypertension at 130/80 or higher. So that is certainly lower than it's ever been, and it is true that even small increments of elevation start to lead to risk. And so debating when there's enough risk to call it a problem is certainly an issue. All right, so here's an example, the Mr. Fit study. This was done a few years back, and what blood pressure is the lowest risk? You can look at this slide and determine that. If you look at the bottom, you can see the systolic blood pressure slowly creeps up from decile 1 to 10, and same with the diastolic blood pressure. That's DPB is diastolic blood pressure, and systolic blood pressure is SBP. And then on the left side, you can see it says relative risk of heart disease. And so the risk goes from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. That's, from 1 to 2 is increasing by 100%. And so as you go along and the blood pressure elevates, you can see that there is an increase in the risk. So as little as, greater than 112/71, between that and 118/71, you start to see it creeping up, and then the asterisk shows that it's not statistically significant yet. So at 121/79, it becomes statistically significant. So anything above basically 120/80, you're starting to see an increase in risk. And a lot of patients I have, they'll say, well, my blood pressure is only 150/90. Okay, well, let's take a look. What's the risk then? Well, the risk is what? 2 to 3 to 4-fold higher. So, significantly higher risk of heart disease, death. We're not just talking about, mamsy-pamsy things here. We're talking about some serious stuff. And then stroke death is very, very similar. In fact, the curve seems to go even higher up, in a more brisk, swift kind of curve. And very similar numbers, but all the same actually, for this from the same study, Mr. Fit. And you can see again, there's an increase in the risk. In fact, as little as 150 over 98 or higher, that or higher than 150 over 98, you can see this the systolic, if the systolic is above 151, your risk of stroke death is greater than 8-fold higher. Years ago, the 151 over 98, that was no big deal. People would be like, oh, that's not that bad. But they're finding that the risk is really elevating, and that's a big deal. All right. So what causes high blood pressure? That's a great question, and it's been one that has been difficult to solve. Basically, I remember in medical school, they call it essential hypertension. Well, what does that mean, essential? Essentially, you have it? I mean, what is that supposed to mean? And, I still don't know exactly what they mean by essential. It basically means there's no obvious cause. And that's sort of the description. But in fact, we do have a much better idea of what essential hypertension is than we did 20, 30 years ago, for sure. We know that in many cases, there's an intrauterine predisposition. There's something that happens in utero, in mama's womb, that makes us more at risk when we're 50, 60, 70 years old. And there are a small number of significant genetic issues there, but that doesn't seem to be the predominating answer most of the time. The other thing is our lifestyle. Our lifestyle plays a role, and it's a complex interaction between where our body comes from and what is going on right now in terms of our activities. All right, so this is an important message. Two people might follow identical lifestyles, but due to different inherited tendencies, one may have high blood pressure and the other may not. So just because you have a certain lifestyle does not mean that there's a guarantee that you're going to have completely normal blood pressure, because there's more involved. Okay, so what are some why are some at particular risk of high blood pressure? So we learned a lot when they started transplanting kidneys. This is a fascinating discussion. So what do you think? You take somebody and their kidneys are failing. Their kidneys have stopped working. Many times they're on dialysis. And we've now been able to put a kidney in a person. And we find out what goes on with the blood pressure. So if you have a person and they have high blood pressure before they have the kidney placed, and then they have the new kidney put into their body, guess what happens? Their blood pressure, in most cases, now is what the previous person who gave the kidneys blood pressure was. So if the person who gave the kidney had normal blood pressure, the recipient of the kidney now has normal blood pressure. If the person who gave the kidney had high blood pressure, guess what? The person who receives the kidney now has high blood pressure in most cases. So the kidneys are key. The kidneys are key. And we know that there's a very strong connection with what is going on in mama's womb. This intrauterine growth restriction is a major factor. This issue of nephrons forming inadequately, not enough, from 28 to 36 weeks of gestation plays a huge role as to whether you're going to get high blood pressure years down the road when you're 50, 60, 70, 80 years of age. Those nephrons slowly break down over your lifetime. And as they do, you are at increasing risk of high blood pressure. And so if you don't generate enough nephrons, these little units that are the actual workers to clean your blood, you have millions and millions of them in each kidney. If you don't have enough of them formed in utero, you go on to lack adequate supply when you're older. And that is why many people get high blood pressure. So a deficient number occurs when a baby is stressed, for example. So if mama's going through stress or the baby's going through stress, maybe from some kind of in utero thing, diet, whatever it is, the baby during that third trimester will not make as many nephrons, and that will put them at risk later. Okay, so intra-utero-placental insufficiency, that is a long name meaning inadequate blood flow from the mother to the fetus. It's a common cause of kidney issues in the third trimester. And the excess levels of corticoids and steroid hormones, stress hormones during that third trimester is a huge issue when it comes to making these nephrons. All right, so it may be something that you sort of inherit depending on what was going on with mom when you were in the womb. All right, so, but having said that, lifestyle is still very, very important. And so although we'll be looking at lifestyle and other natural therapies, the presence of hypertension does not necessarily mean a person is following a poor lifestyle. Now, granted, having said that, many of us can do better, and we want to. So let's see how Americans are doing. How well are we doing at high blood pressure issues, at controlling it? All right, so this data is, from over several decades from the NHANES data, which is a national effort by the health agencies in the United States to keep track of what's going on with Americans' health. And you can see here, there's 3 different sections. There's awareness, treatment, and control. Okay, so the question is how aware are people that they have high blood pressure? Okay, so as you can see over the years when they do these surveys, they found that the awareness has gone up. Some, 80% it looks like of Americans now know whether or not they have high blood pressure. So the treatment has gone up. Most Americans are now under treatment for high blood pressure. But look at this. How are we doing on control? Yes, we've improved. We're from very low percentages up to maybe 50% now, but that's still not very good. And so that means that most patients don't have good enough control. It means that there's a huge percentage that are just not well controlled. Okay, so could the less than optimal rates of control relate to patients' lack of acceptance regarding the conventional approach to high blood pressure? I believe that is the reason, or one of the reasons, one of the main reasons. What is the cornerstone of high blood pressure therapy? I mean, this is fascinating. When I was sitting there in medical school, I remember them listing the first most important treatment for high blood pressure, and then they put lifestyle. That's all they said, lifestyle. And then that was all they said. And then they went to the next thing, which was medications, and we spent 90% of the rest of the class talking about medications. And they just said one word about lifestyle, basically. All right, so what happens is lifestyle is always acknowledged that it's very important, but it usually is given relatively minimal attention, and the focus is on medications. All right, and this is a classic example of that. The National Health Statistics reports. This is an effort by these clinicians, these researchers, I should say, to understand what happens when primary care physicians meet with their patients regarding high blood pressure. And you can read this whole article, every word, every side of it, and they never once talk about in any significant way about lifestyle treatment. The whole focus is on medications. And granted, medications have their place, and I'm certainly one who has prescribed many medications for high blood pressure. But I really, really want you to understand that there is a lot of power, and I've seen it with my own eyes many times now. There's a lot of power in lifestyle. and it should not be neglected. All right, so although counseling about lifestyle factors plays a role, prescribing antihypertensive medications remain the cornerstone of the medical management of hypertension. This is from Circulation 2011. So it's right there in the medical, medical literature. So perhaps the greatest problem with blood pressure therapy compliance. So what is the greatest problem? Well, the greatest problem has to do with the common symptoms of blood pressure medications: frequent urination, fatigue, dizziness, cough, exercise issues, sexual dysfunction, depression even. And guess what? Guess how many guess what percentage of people in terms of uncontrolled high blood pressure, what symptoms they have? You know, what percentage of them, or do they have significant symptoms? Well, the answer is that people with uncontrolled high blood pressure typically have no symptoms. They have no symptoms. They do not know that it's happening to them. And they say, I feel just fine. And then they get put on medications and then they feel worse. And so that is probably the #1 reason why the compliance is an issue. And they've done the research on it. Here's a classic example looking at, actually, this is a meta-analysis from 2011. Medication adherence based on a series of studies, most lasting 12 months or less. What's the adherence? How well are people taking their blood pressure medicines? And this list here of the BBs is the beta blockers and so on and so forth. It's the various kinds of blood pressure medicines that we give. And you can see how well do people take it. So the adherence was 28% for beta blockers, 51% for diuretics, calcium channel blockers, another kind, 52%, ACE inhibitors, 57%, and lo and behold, the #1, angiotensin II receptor blockers, 65%. So they're the best. They're the best tolerated, but then again, 65% still not that great. So what happens with overtreating too? So here's the other issue is, you want to get the blood pressure down, but what they've found with overtreating high blood pressure with medications, we want the blood pressure as low as possible. That's what the Mr. Fit trial showed. Many studies have showed that. But when you use medications and you push it down too low, you actually begin to increase the risk. Here you can see it going up as the numbers are going down. Adjusted 4.5-year risk of events. So this is things like cardiovascular death, heart attack, stroke, hospitalization for heart failure. And those are very important things. And hold on one second. Hey, Jeff, can you check there's somebody knocking on the door. Sorry, someone is knocking on the door. Sorry. They're trying to get into our clinic already. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so anyways, if you overtreat blood pressure, so here in this case you've got it under 112 systolic. That's typically just fine. But here they're seeing that the risk is going up, and this was treating it with an angiotensin receptor blocker, telmisartan, and ramipril, which is an ACE inhibitor. Okay, so that is an important issue, and this J curve, it's called a J curve, has been seen in several studies using medications. All right, so in other words, the common solution for high blood pressure medications may create more pressure or stress than the hypertension itself when you're having too many side effects. So is there a better way? Can we find a way to use less medication? Well, I think we can. Could there be a no pressure solution to blood pressure issues? And there certainly is. So we set up this blood pressure acronym in our book. And so we just want to share that with you so you can start to see which areas of life seem to have a significant effect on the blood pressure. And in fact, it's quite a few areas. So nutrition, optimal choice of beverages. So N is nutrition, O is optimal choice of beverages. P is physical exercise. R is rest. E is environment. S is stress management. The other S is social support. U is use of natural adjuncts, which herbals and so on. And then R is refraining from pressures and excesses. So that's issues related to medications that raise blood pressure and some toxins we look at there. And then the final one is exercising faith in God. We believe that there's a strong relationship between spiritual things, your spirituality, and high blood pressure. And in fact, the research is pretty robust on this issue now. Hundreds of studies looking at high blood pressure and religiosity or spirituality, and some thousands of studies, over 4,000 studies now looking at health and spirituality in general. So it's becoming a robust field, in growing in numbers, and it should not be neglected. All right, so we don't have time to go through everything tonight. I thought I'd just touch a little bit on the nutrition and beverage section. If you want to get more out of all these topics, come to our class, and we could certainly just fill in the blanks there. I'll touch a little bit on nutrition. There's still a lot more to say about nutrition than I'm going to be able to say tonight, but we'll do our best for you here, just to give you a clear sense of it, because I believe nutrition is one of the more powerful areas that you can improve your blood pressure with. Okay, so we just kind of narrowed it down to three particulars here when it comes to high blood pressure. So particular number one is increase your plant food consumption. Whole plant foods are loaded with vitamins and minerals, fiber, and phytochemicals, many of which have an overlap into high blood pressure issues. And so a wide variety of plant foods, whole plant foods, simply prepared, cooked or raw, can be a great blessing to you when it comes to high blood pressure. And we just don't have time to get into all the things about magnesium and calcium and potassium, and the fact that there are ACE inhibitors in your plant foods. I mean, there's just an abundance of knowledge there, and we'll cover that on Thursday night. So hope you can come. Control calories. We just finished the weight loss class here at South Bay. We had some phenomenal results, and those people, I guarantee you, were seeing improvements in their blood pressure. Even if their blood pressure wasn't overtly hypertensive, they were seeing improvements. And the weight coming down, the blood pressure comes down. And then salt is obviously a big issue, and the lack of potassium mixing with too much salt puts us at an issue with high blood pressure, excess water in the arteries, etc. All right, so do typical diet practices make a difference? So this is a fascinating research study that was done through the Adventist Health Study 2. And I actually was able to be a researcher in that study for a little while I was in my training down in Southern California. So I got a firsthand exposure to the huge amount of efforts that are being made to tease out disease and so on. So as you can look, just take a look on the right of this chart here. It's a fascinating discovery that they made. So what they did was they took their 90,000 people, basically 89,000 people, and they went ahead and categorized them by the kind of diet they said they were eating. All right, so they non-vegetarian, semi-vegetarian. You can see the definition on the bottom of semi-vegetarian. They eat meat, poultry, fish less than once a week. Pesco-vegetarian, that's they eat fish. And then whole plant foods. They lacto-ovo is eggs and dairy. vegetarian, and then the vegans, skip all of it and just stay with the whole plants. And so they want to see, okay, well, what goes on with hypertension? And then I threw in the diabetes data for comparison there. And you can see that the risk, so one is like you're the top risk, okay? And then it drops to 0.75, that's a 25% reduction in risk of getting diabetes or hypertension. And then this is a 50% reduction, and then a 75% reduction. If you look, you have over a 75% reduction in risk if you're a vegan. If you are lacto-ovo, it's about a 60% reduction. If you're pesco, you have about a 40% reduction. Semi-vegetarian, you have a 25% reduction. All right, so you see the steep fall as you increase the amount of whole plant foods in your diet. And so that's the lesson, I think, from this. And it also does the same thing with diabetes. Amazing. And we have a diabetes class coming up soon that Dr. Innenker and her colleagues will be leading out in. So if you have diabetes or you know someone with diabetes, check out that class and they will fill in the blanks there on that. All right, so this is a great kind of summary research study that was done looking at the various food groups that exist and whether or not they affect blood pressure. And so you can see we've simplified it down into a very kind of straightforward thing. And yet again, whole plant foods takes the cake. And the processed foods, the meat, the fish, it's interesting that fish is in there. And of course, sugar sweetened beverages is a processed food. Those make your blood pressure go up. So people eat a lot of red meat, regular fish intake, plenty of processed meat, so hot dogs and hamburgers and so on, and then drink sodas every day. They are much, much more likely to have high blood pressure than folks who eat a lot of nuts, whole grains, legumes, as in, beans, fruits, and green leafy vegetables. Those were the big five when it came to lowering blood pressure. So fascinating findings there. So why are the foods so powerful? Well, we just don't have time to really get into it, but I'll say one thing about flaxseed. I love flaxseed. I eat flaxseed every day. I have a coffee grinder on my counter and I press that button every day and grind my flaxseed. And I put it in my oatmeal, in my cereals. I'll add it to salads. Flaxseed is very good for you. It's very helpful in many factors. Not only bowel regulation, improving inflammation in your body. It seems to have some preventive effects on cancer. Not only all that, it has a blood pressure lowering effect. And this research study, it was pretty eye-opening. They looked at 110 total people. This was a double-blinded, placebo-controlled randomized trial. And it was interesting because it wasn't pills they were using. They did not use flaxseed pills. They actually hid the flaxseed, the ground flaxseed, in muffins and other similar products. And they equally distributed them to these people. It was a big undertaking. And so the people had no idea. They asked them, they did surveys to try to see if they could figure out which group they were in, and they couldn't figure it out. And so they had a good study here. And what they found was that the systolic blood pressure at the end of the study, so it was 30 grams of milled flaxseed over 6 months, they found at the end of the study that the systolic blood pressure was 10 points lower, and the diastolic was 7 points lower in the flaxseed group compared with placebo after 6 months. Patients who entered the trial with a systolic blood pressure greater than 140 at baseline obtained a significant reduction of 15 points in systolic blood pressure and 7 points in diastolic from flaxseed. So this is a drug effect, people. This is a drug effect, and it's about 3 tablespoons a day of flaxseed. So, if you are on a blood thinner, there is a blood thinning effect with this. So you may want to, think about that and not take as much in that case. maybe discuss it with your doctor. But for most people, they should be just fine. All right, and here, of course, is the graph, and it shows that the control group actually went up a little bit on their systolic blood pressure, and the other group, the ones who took the flaxseed, dropped quite a bit. You can see that's the same with the diastolic there. All right, so that's excellent stuff. All right, so let's take a quick look at salt sensitivity. You know, salt sensitive people exist. That means that when they eat salt, their blood pressure goes up. So for some folks, when they eat salt, it doesn't seem to have much of an effect on their blood pressure. Their kidneys are nice and strong and able to fend off the insult of the salt, and they keep their blood pressure pretty steady. But there are folks who have a significant salt sensitivity, and the list is before you. Greater age, so as you get older, it tends to happen. As you get a chronic medical problem, it tends to happen. And there's a genetic marker, GNAI2, genetic marker we know exists, and that can be tested for. And we know that people from the Caribbean seem to be more likely to have some of this issue. And that may be playing a role in why our African-American folks tend to have more issues with high blood pressure, and they need to be that much more careful with salt. So where does our salt come from? People say, well, doctor, I've probably had people say this to me 100 times. I don't know, lots and lots of times. They say, I don't salt my food. I don't need much salt. Well, I don't know about that. Where do you get your food from? That's the more important question. Do you get your food from processed foods and restaurant foods? If you do, I mean, there's a growing number of people. In fact, I think maybe even a majority. I don't know if that's true yet, but a significant percentage of Americans eat out on almost a daily basis, if not every meal. And the processed and restaurant foods are just loaded with sodium. And so that's where Americans get their sodium, 77%. So let's see, adding it at home. Let's see, what's that one? While eating, only 6%. It's amazing that people think that's where all the salt comes from, but that's not true. That's only 6% of people's salt intake. Sodium can hide in the food and you can't even tell it's there. You know, just think about what the picture we have on the screen here with the spaghetti sauce. You taste that, it doesn't taste that salty, and you look at the bottle and you look at the nutrition facts label, and voila, it's loaded with sodium, tons. And it's a striking example. So next time you eat spaghetti sauce, look at the bottle and see how much sodium is actually in there, and how much a serving size actually is. And it's pretty eye-opening. All right, so the other thing that's interesting about sodium and your diet is that your taste buds actually change, and they've demonstrated that in research studies. When you stick to low salt options, at first, you don't like it. The food's too bland. It doesn't taste the same. And but if you stick with it and don't eat the salty food, your taste buds will become more sensitive, and you will learn your taste buds and your brain learn to enjoy the subtle flavors. And pretty soon, after a little while, the salty food is too salty. And we'll get into that more on Thursday. Okay, so let's turn our attention now to optimal choice in beverages. How are we doing on time? 6:45. Okay. All right, so we'll touch on this here a little bit, and then we'll be finished, and we'll have some time for questions. All right, so let's talk about beverages. So what's the ideal beverage when you want to lower blood pressure? Well, that's an interesting topic, and one that we're going to touch on right now. So what's the best blood pressure beverage? Well, is alcohol? Well, not so much. Alcohol raises blood pressure, especially more than 3 drinks at a time. I've had it happen a number of times. Patient comes into the ER, They're having stroke-like symptoms, and you ask them about alcohol, and they just finished drinking a bunch of it. And it's scary to have people having those kind of symptoms. Binge drinking leads to long-term blood pressure problems. Moderate drinking can also be a problem. It can affect medications, the way they work. Clonidine example of that. It can increase side effects of some meds. It can undermine weight control efforts. Alcohol has a lot of calories, 7 calories per gram. So a lot of calories there can make you gain weight. And one of the most important things alcohol does is it affects the frontal lobe of your brain. And it makes it so that your ability to control what you do is reduced, and that can lead to other calorie intake that you maybe aren't even paying attention to. All right, so should we opt for soft drinks? So what do you think, soft drinks? Well, the one thing about soft drinks is that they are the most powerful weight gaining tool in America. Soft drinks make you gain weight, and they're the most powerful. And do they raise your risk of blood pressure elevation? Absolutely, because they make you gain weight. So the risk of hypertension increases 8.2% for every additional sugar-sweetened beverage per day. And that's an established fact that's been demonstrated in multiple different studies. And your risk is going to go up whenever you take soft drinks. All right, and it's the weight gain. That's why it goes up. You are gaining weight in many cases. So how are Americans doing when it comes to soft drink consumption? Well, we can look at it in terms of percentages of calories and added sugar. So you're supposed to have not more than 10% of your calories as added sugar, and I still think that's pretty liberal. Averages are more like 16%. And then almost half of that, 47% of that added sugar, that extra 15% is, this percentage here. Half of this is this, almost half. And so that is where the added sugar comes from. This almost half is from sweetened soft drinks. So let's take an example. So you have a 12-ounce can of soda. That's 150 calories, 40 to 50 grams of sugar. High fructose corn syrup is what kind of sugar? And that's, about 10 teaspoons of table sugar. If these calories are added to the typical US diet without reducing intake of other calories, a single soda per day could lead to a weight gain of 15 pounds. 15 pounds you could gain with a single soda. All right, so, people do try to minimize that, but it's such a powerful form of gaining weight. All right, let's look at another cause of high blood pressure when it comes to drinks. So they've taken quite a bit of a look at caffeine. We know caffeine is a relative of adrenaline, and so it just makes sense that it's going to have blood pressure raising effects. So here's an example without getting into all the data, just a summary statement. From Mort and Cruz, that reviews of caffeine's acute effects on blood pressure indicate changes of 3 to 15 points systolic and 4 to 13 points diastolic. Typically, blood pressure changes occur within 30 minutes and peak in 1 to 2 hours and may persist for more than 4 hours. All right, so blood pressure is elevated when you take caffeine, and that's a fact. What else does it do? It stiffens your arteries. It has an effect on stiffening arteries for, about 3 hours. And that is this dose here, 80 to 240 milligrams. They found increases arterial stiffness for 3 hours. Those who already have high blood pressure, it does it for even longer. So they found that it was more than 3 hours. For those. So just think about it. You have high blood pressure. You take caffeine. Not only does it raise your blood pressure, but it stiffens your arteries, putting you at even increased more risk of heart attacks and strokes and so on. So you don't want to have stiff arteries. You want to have those nice pliable arteries. that keep that blood pressure down. All right, so what's the conclusion then? Well, Dr. James in 2004, this has been for years now, had this conclusion: critical review of dietary caffeine and blood pressure, a relationship that should be taken more seriously. You know, some 80% or 85% of Americans take caffeine every day. And we have, you know, a third of Americans have high blood pressure documented. So Dr. James's conclusions continues: there is extensive evidence that caffeine at dietary doses increases blood pressure. When considered comprehensively, findings from experimental and epidemiological studies converge to show that blood pressure remains reactive to the pressor effects. The pressor means blood pressure increasing effects of caffeine in the diet. Overall, the impact of dietary caffeine on the population blood pressure is likely to be modest, maybe 4 to 2 points. And we don't have time to get into it here, but there are multiple things in our lifestyle that affect our blood pressure. And if you just take one of each of these things, it seems like a small thing. But as you add in all these things, they seem many times to not just have additive effects, but often they can have multiplying effects, both to increase and to decrease. And so we want those good things coming in and those bad things going out. At these levels, however, population studies of blood pressure indicate that caffeine use could account for premature deaths in the region of 14% for coronary heart disease and 20% for stroke. So blood pressure elevation is such a powerful risk factor for heart disease and stroke that you don't even have to have that much of an elevation to have significant increases in risk. So what should we drink? You took, Dr. Stunky, you've taken everything from me. Well, that's not true. There is one incredible drink that, yes, there's an adjustment many times to getting going on it. I know I went through that. I used to be a Mountain Dew addict. But, you know, you can make changes and you can do what's right for your body. You can make your body feel better. Your body will feel better if you skip on some of these extras and you just turn to what we have in that picture in front of us: plain old water. In fact, there's some really interesting research on water that I want to look at here from Dr. Jackie Chan. She, I knew her when I was doing research at Adventist Health Study 2 back at this time, and she was just publishing this research when I was doing my research on diabetes. And she presented this material to us, and it was shocking. It was really pretty shocking to see the associations. And she tried every way that she could to eliminate this association by taking out confounders and so on, and she could not make it go away. And so daily water drinking and relative risk of fatal heart disease is significantly higher. So the risk of fatal heart disease is significantly higher when you drink less than 2 glasses of water a day compared to those who drink greater than 5 glasses of water a day. It seems to be stronger. The effect seems to be stronger in men than women. I'm not sure why, but it is stronger. And so fatal heart disease is associated with water drinking. So daily consumption of fluids other than water. This was the equally fascinating concept. Why is it that when she just removed water and then left all the other drinks, that the risks go up so much, and much more in women? So women, for whatever reason, if they drink 5 glasses of other fluids a day, this includes fruit juices, these women had a significantly increased risk of 2.5-fold more risk of fatal heart disease than those who drank less than 2 glasses a day of other fluids. And she could not make this go away, you know, and she hypothesized to us about what might be the role of these things. You know, is this a real finding? Is this something that has a real kind of connection? Is there a physiological reason? And she had a couple hypotheses. You know, one, we know that as you get dehydrated, your blood gets thicker. And if you're already at risk of heart disease, you have thicker blood, you're going to go ahead and be at higher risk of having a deadly heart attack. We know that many heart attacks occur in the morning, in the early morning, when people are more dehydrated after sleeping all night. So that may be it. And then she looked at pretty closely what kind of things do fluids other than a water do. And one thing that she was able to look at was the amount of solutes in these fluids. The concentration of many of these tends to be quite high. And what she hypothesized was that maybe the water is coming out of the blood, going into the intestines to help equalize the solute concentration to allow to ease the transmission of these solutes into the blood, and be able to go ahead and digest it and so on, get it into the cells. And when you have to take water out of the blood, you're not only dehydrating, but maybe you're dehydrating even more than you were before. So that's the question. I don't think we've fully solved this answer, but this question, but there it is, and I think it's fascinating information. What else does water drinking help? It helps constipation. I mean, that's one of the, I would say probably 100 times. Probably Dr. Nelson's done it thousands of times. Have a patient come in with constipation issues, and what do? You put them on an IV and you just give them some water, and lo and behold, the constipation starts to solve itself. Diabetic complications, when you hydrate somebody, the blood sugars come down. Urinary infections, we know, are related to a lack of water drinking, lack of hydration. Kidney stones are strongly related to that. That's one of the favorite things for urologists to say, drink more water. And they probably say that all day long in their clinics. And then gallbladder disease, we know there's a relationship there. I'm not sure exactly why that is. Probably the concentration of the cholesterol and bile acids and so on in the gallbladder is higher when you don't drink water, and perhaps that plays a role in the stone formation. So those are some of the features that we have. So that concludes my talk for today. Just a little tidbit, just a little taste of what we have in store for you. We have a number of other topics that we'll be covering: physical exercise, rest, environment. There's some key features of fresh air and noise and other things that we look at. Obviously, stress is has a huge role to play in blood pressure. And so we look at things like depression, anxiety. We look at agitation, things like that. Social support, we know that low social support is associated with high blood pressure. So we take a look at that. And we touch on some of the herbs and things that sometimes can be an adjunct if you can't get your blood pressure down with all these other efforts. And then we want to make sure you're not doing something in your lifestyle, in your daily habit, that is raising your blood pressure and you just didn't realize it. And probably the number one thing in that area is NSAIDs. So the over-the-counter pain medicines that we use day in and day out, especially as you get older, has an effect to raise the blood pressure, and it's dangerous. And we will look at that in a minute. And let's see, I guess I'm missing the last one there. Oh no, it came off the screen. Sorry about that. The last one is exercising faith in God. And that, like we mentioned earlier, is a very important factor. And we want to touch on that as well and look at some of the research. There's some excellent research showing that sometimes spirituality helps blood pressure and sometimes it hurts it. And it's an interesting concept to study why that's the case. So if you're interested in learning more about those things, I invite you to join us. Coming this Thursday, we'll be meeting. Eric, what time are we starting at? 7, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Why don't I make a quick announcement about that? And then those of you who might have some questions, I already see one question in the chat.
Oh.
Feel free to think of some questions for Dr. Stunky. But while we're doing that, I want to share with you how you can sign up for this hypertension program. You should be able to see my screen. The web address is there in the upper left-hand corner, southbaysda.org. I think most of you are probably familiar with that website by now. But if you go there, it'll look something like this. And right up here, there is a link that you can click for health. You want to look at the upcoming programs because we still have the best way and some healthy cooking things there, and you're welcome to check those out as well. Or you can click down here under health and upcoming programs. If you want to know what some of the upcoming programs for healthy living are, you can get to the same place by clicking upcoming programs on the health link up above. Of course, tonight is dinner with the doctor, and so you've already come here. The reversing hypertension is the next class, the next weekly class. And as Greg mentioned, that is starting this next Thursday, April 22. It will run for 4 weeks through May 13. And if you'd like some more information about the class, you can click this link. If you'd like to register for the class, click right here where it says register and give your name, and I think it asks for your telephone or an email address or something like that. It's very simple to sign up. We already have about 20 people registered, and so we'd love to have some more of you sign up if you are interested. It'll be a similar format to tonight, except in addition, we're going to have some information about cooking, and we'll have some small group discussion time. Dr. Steinke's worked up some discussion questions that we can go over. But let's go back to Dr. Steinke here. Dr. Steinke, I have a question in the chat here from Phil Mills, and looks like you already answered it, but do you want to answer it for everyone else there?
Sure, we can talk about that. Yeah. So, dramatic changes in diet can produce diarrhea. I mean, that can happen. And so, yeah, you could certainly get that with flaxseed, ground flaxseed, if you suddenly go to 3 tablespoons. Probably what I'd recommend if you start to notice that's happening is just a gradual increase. Give your bowels a chance to get used to the new levels of fiber and the changes that occur. You have to allow your the bacteria in your gut to go through changes too. There's a dramatic change from a heavily processed diet to a whole plant-based diet in the kinds of bacteria that are there. We now know that there's some 10,000 different kinds of bacteria in your gut. Of course, Americans only have 7,000 of those, as it turns out, and they looked at some Africans and they had 10,000. So, and it looks like the more you have in your gut, the better it is. So, anyways, those bacteria have to be given time to grow and adjust. So, it's okay if you have gas for a few weeks while you're going through these changes. That's a good thing. That means that these bacteria are the good bacteria are taken over and the bad bacteria are being suppressed in your gut, and that's a wonderful thing. So yeah, go ahead and take the flaxseed. I'm okay with you taking flaxseed. It's a wonderful option, and it will help with many things. And if it's too strong at 3 tablespoons, just lower the dose and take a little less.
Yeah, what I tell my patients is you probably want to increase your dose of fiber by about 1 dose every week.
Okay.
So I would probably start with 1 tablespoon and then work your way up weekly until you get to 3 tablespoons. I would also say that along with that fiber, you better be drinking a lot of that water.
That's right.
Because if you take a whole bunch of fiber and forget to drink water, you will get constipated.
Yeah, so that's a good point. These things go hand in hand. That you don't want to just pack in the fiber, and then keep your body really dry. That's just going to be trouble. So you want to stay hydrated and you want to get that healthy fiber-rich food.
Good. Well, Dr. Steinke, the thing I learned tonight that was the most helpful was that graph that you showed, kind of the lack of benefit from really trying to drive blood pressure down using medications. And I don't know this for sure. Maybe you want to comment on it, but I would bet that if you got your blood pressure down naturally, you would not see those increases in heart attacks and strokes and things of that nature.
And that's exactly what they saw in the Mr. Fit trial, was a continual improvement in risk as the blood pressure came down. And so that's exactly true. I mean, and that's what I think is going on, is your body has the blood pressure up, and it's hurting your organs. but your physiology is used to that. And so your physiology adjusts and it makes the best of it, but it's still harming you. And so when you bring down the blood pressure with just one, just affecting one physiologic mechanism in your body, and the rest of the body is not able to obtain that benefit from a lifestyle change, you see this increased risk as you get it too low. And it definitely increases cardiovascular events and so on. So when you have that narrowing of the arteries, let's say you have a narrowing of the artery in your brain, and you get that blood pressure too low, the blood is just not flowing adequately through that artery in your brain, and it increases your risk of a stroke. I've personally seen those kind of strokes a number of times.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, when I was in surgery training, we had a particularly interesting professor who noted years before the studies that you're mentioning that isolated systolic hypertension in the very elderly, at that time, the fad was to treat that with increasing doses of beta blockers.
right.
And he said that, well, yeah, it did keep people's blood pressure down and they didn't have the heart attacks, but actually increased their risk of stroke by trying to aggressively lower their systolic hypertension. And I think you shared some more updated data where in the elderly, especially well, I shouldn't say over 60 is elderly there. We're all going to be old here pretty soon. But we, the recommendation from that body was not to try to get their blood pressure down much below 150 if they
Exactly.
were over age
Yeah.
60 and didn't have kidneys disease or diabetes.
That's right. Yeah, that was the GNC recommendations, and those have been the standard for a long, long time until some recent moves by the American Heart Association. But I still very much believe that, and I think that that's true. That if you think that you might have some narrowing of your arteries, and you have to have that circulation, you cannot lower the blood pressure so much that you are unable to get perfusion to certain key spots. And so, why not do it naturally whenever possible, so that you can allow your body to open up those arteries. That happens too. The arteries open up. It takes time, but even in a very short term, when you start to increase the natural substances that give you that nitric oxide, through for example, green leafy vegetables give you a lot of nitric oxide capacity. And so when you're going ahead and eating that, that narrowed artery with that clog in there, the artery gets better at dilating, even though that clog is there. And it begins to help a lot. Your blood starts to thin naturally, and that's a very wonderful thing to get through that clogged narrowed artery. And so there's just multiple things that are happening as you change your lifestyle that benefit you and make it a lot safer than just bringing the medicine, the pressure down too low with medication.
Yeah.
But having said that, you should not neglect your blood pressure. If you are at a place where you need blood pressure medicine, and your blood pressure is way too high without it, then you need to take blood pressure medicine until you can naturally get your blood pressure down to a safe range. You don't just let your blood pressure be, significantly high without at least giving it some protection.
Good. But I know 100% for sure that if you sign up for Dr. Steinke's class starting this next Thursday, you better be seeing your doctor within 3 or 4 weeks, because they might need to decrease the amount of medication that you're taking for your blood pressure if you're on a blood pressure medicine already, because that amount of medication you'll need will decrease and you can probably get off of it eventually. So with that, Dr. Steinke, I just really appreciate your expertise and really appreciate your slides. I learned new things this evening, and I'm sure everyone else did as well. I'm hopeful that some of you can sign up for that hypertension program. Again, you can just go to southbaysda.org and click the health tab and then scroll down until you find the hypertension program. Register for that, and it's 4 weeks starting this next Thursday. If you register, you will get emailed a Zoom link for that program. And we'll have even more information about hypertension and how you can reverse it naturally. Thank you all for being here this evening. And Chris, you're still with us in that beautiful spot, getting your vitamin D and all sorts of other things, fresh air, it looks like as well. Do you mind closing our meeting with prayer here?
I'd be happy to. I just want to express gratitude to Dr. Stunky. I have heard your hypertension presentation for several years now, and every single time I learn something new or am reminded of something I forgot last year, you know, for anyone that's ever taken the program before, I think it's worth just a refresher every year. It's good to be reminded of these things. You know, since blood pressure is one of those silent killers, we need to be reminded to avoid that. So any of you that's on here, I just encourage you to sign up for the program as well. Like I said, I've taken it for several years and it's been great. So I'm looking forward to it. Dr. Stanky, let's close with a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we are grateful for your wonderful ways of working in our lives. We thank you for this good information we've learned this evening. Help us to be in health even as our soul prospers. I pray that you'll be with each one here, guide them and help them to stay close to you. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Before you all go, one more time, Greg, you're also starting this new practice, direct medical care. What's the website again?
lifemedclinic.org.
lifemedclinic.org. I think I put that in the chat.
Yep.
I'll put it in there again.
Yeah, our phone number's there, and we're starting May 3rd. That's our first day. So if you're looking for a doctor or looking for help and focus on lifestyle things, we'd be happy to help you.
There we go. All right. Well, good night, everybody. Look forward to seeing you on Thursday, hopefully. So remember to go to southbaysda.org and sign up. God bless. Oh, the other thing you could do, if you're interested, you could go to 4605 Redlands Drive and drive past and see the progress toward our community health center right there. The work is progressing. They're putting in drainage, and hopefully this week we'll start working on getting the pad prepared to put in plumbing and stuff.
That's
so
great.
Work is progressing there.
Wonderful.
Chris, if you're interested, they didn't get the ditch dug today. I stopped by around, I guess, 4 o'clock or 4:30 or something, and they had hit the former water meter, and so Tennessee's waters happened to come out and cap that or whatever.
Interesting. Yeah, when I was there at noon, they were waiting on them. They said that the Tennessee American was supposed to be there at 11. So it's still not here. They thought they would be able to clear it, but apparently not.
Yeah, guess not. Oh well. Hi, Indu. Hi, Vinay. Hope you all are doing well. I don't know if you can turn on your, if you can unmute or if you can turn on a video. I don't know whether you have the ability to do that, but I'm glad you're able to join the program. Hello, Beth, and there we go. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Vinay. Hello, Indu.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good,
Hi. Fine. Thank you.
So
good.
nice.
In Boston for the last 8-9 months.
Yes. How is Boston?
But
Good.
how about you? Are you sick or what? You are in the bed?
Good question.
Just
This is
resting.
kind of my standard spot for doing Zoom meetings.
Oh, okay. Then it's
I
fine.
see.
That's mine too. But
Yeah.
not today.
The doctor laying down. This is the one chance.
It's,
Okay.
well, it's
okay.
very comfortable, but I also need to be exercising somehow. Rachel has this nice little bicycle thing she puts under the table, and so whenever she's sitting, she's always pedaling. I need to do some more exercise. So,
Okay. Okay.
um,
Well, it
but
was
yeah,
good information.
yeah, well, you can ask Chris Anderson. Every building committee meeting and every church board meeting, this is about what I look like.
Okay. Okay.
In fact, when he's in a different location, it just looks wrong. Like I'm used to a pillow behind his head.
There you go. Yeah. Anyhow, so you all are doing well in Boston?
No, we are in Chattanooga now.
You're where?
We just got back this week.
We are in Chattanooga.
You're in Chattanooga?
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting.
Right.
We were there about 9 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Wow.
thought you were still there. So you're back in your same house?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Is this permanent? Are you moving back?
No, right now we are here.
Okay. Well, we're glad you're here right now.
Yeah.
I'll tell Rachel to give you a call sometime. Actually, right now, Rachel is out of town. She's out in Oregon. or
Yeah, we have been chatting with each other and I knew that she's, yeah. So you didn't go, so I thought that maybe you are sick or what?
No, I just, somebody has to stay home and earn money, you know,
Oh, yeah.
because these trips are expensive. So
Yep.
have to,
Especially they don't propose that you fly too much.
yeah. Well, I got my chances last weekend. I was up in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So yeah, I've already done my traveling.
Yeah, we got our vaccination, so now you can fly so without any problem.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, children wants us to move for good,
Uh-huh.
but we like to stay here right now
Well,
till we can handle ourselves.
yeah. Well, we of course hope you stay here as long as possible, but I know your kids want you closer to them as well. And at some point you got to start listening to your kids. I'm trying to get my
Oh,
dad
yes.
listening to me and move closer to us too.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm glad you're back. I had no idea. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some kids do.
Thank you. Thank
closer
you.
to
Good to see you.
Good to see you
That was a
too.
beautiful
Yeah.
show today. Very good presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was excellent. Rachel just landed in Seattle here. She just texted me, so I'll have to go. I'm going to sign off the meeting and go chat with her. But Linda and John, glad you all joined us as well.
Thank you.
You're there somewhere, and I think I saw you signed up for the hypertension program.
I did, but now I'm wondering, is it online or is it at the church?
It's online.
Okay, because I thought it was at the church. So, okay, that's good.
It's all online, just like tonight. You'll get emailed a link, and as soon as we have a church, we'll start doing it at the church again.
Okay.
Or in the process of building there, and it'll be nice to see everyone again. Of course, you can always come visit on some weekend. I'm actually preaching this coming Saturday at 4605 Redlands Drive. It's a big tent, so there's no danger of COVID, but it's going to be a beautiful day, and we'll all be outside enjoying the fresh air and social distancing and all those other sort of good things. But COVID's pretty much on the way out here in our community, it looks like. So,
Well, I'm glad we didn't drive all the way out to East Brainerd.
yeah, that would be quite the drive. Yeah, it's 4605 Redlands Drive is where we're at now. And like I said, you're welcome to come there any weekend, but we don't have an actual building where we can do these health presentations yet. So they're still online. And as far as dinner with the doctor goes, I have not yet heard from the North River Civic Center about when they will be opening up. I've asked them, but they have not told us that yet. But as soon as they open up, we can start doing dinner with the doctor in person again. So we'll see. Anyway, God bless you all. Have a good rest of your evening, and we'll see you hopefully Thursday.
Thank you.
Bye.